Good evening, YouTube readers. This is Jessie, once again bringing you a brand new Manga Monday. And starting off our new week with a new manga and classic novel, this week is going to be Jane Eyre. And Jane Eyre is brought to us once again by Manga Classics, of course. The Jane Eyre originally was written by Charlotte Bronte, but for the sake of Manga Classics, it was adapted by Crystal S. Chan. C-H-A-N. Chan. Pardon my mispronunciation, I just pronounce it as I see it. But, anywho, back to where we were. And, of course, once again, the art is done by SunNeko Lee. And she's done wonderful work once again, but see, that's the problem. I think she did a little bit too good of work on Jane Eyre, because if anybody who's read the Jane Eyre novel by Miss Bronte, I'll be going over that Friday and try to do an in-depth character review and overlying story review, but right now we're talking about the manga. And while the manga does go so far into the novel, we're mostly talking, I guess, on content and art today, but and the problem lies within the art, because SunNeko Lee did such a wonderful job, like in comparison with Scarlet Letter, because as I said, I've noticed two distinct art styles between different mangas, and this one's similar to the Scarlet Letter in the rounded features and not as quite angular and sharp as you would see in Pride and Prejudice, and I believe Sense and Sensibility. They have different hairstyles, like more curlier hair than it is shiny and curvy, and more angular features like pointed chins and fingers. And the Scarlet Letter and Jane Eyre, personally, I find the characters' features more rounded and cutish, I think, or how you would like to call that, maybe kawaii. But if I'm wrong, just correct me in the comments. But I do enjoy this art style. But the thing is, see, if you've ever read Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, I never quite got to finish that thought a moment ago, but see, it's described that, even though Jane has a wonderful mind and very inquisitive, people have always overlooked her because she was a very plain child, a very small child, I guess a very depressed child. So she's supposed to look unappealing, aesthetically unappealing, but SunNeko Lee did such a good job in this manga that Jane Eyre looks small in stature and very adorable. I mean, she gives an air of someone who needs to be protected, because she's just so fragile and almost in a way childlike, because in comparison, I believe, with everybody else's physical stature and height, she's quite small, and that might be from her might be like a stunted growth. She wasn't allowed out a lot as a child. There's a lot of rainy days where she lived, so I'm pretty sure she didn't get much sunlight. And the general overall treatment from her family, Mrs. Reed and her cousins, I'm sure had a lot to do to it. And then we go to the other main character of the story, Mr. Rochester, who in the novel, I believe, was gone as far to even describe as ugly, visually unappealing to women, but he was supposed to have this fiery, charismatic personality, and of course he was rich. But in the manga, he is by every definition the dashing hero. He has very coiffed hair and the sideburns and his rounded features as well, so he's meant to be very attractive in this book, but that's what kind of leads it away from the original context of the novel, because one's supposed to be plain and one's supposed to be ugly, but by manga standards, they're both very attractive. And so that's what I mean when I say SunNeko Lee went a little too far with her skills, because she made them look absolutely wonderful when in the book they're not supposed to be. But as far as I can tell from the book, I mean, the manga goes pretty well hand in hand with what the novel is, if you ever take a chance to read Jane Eyre. If not, pick up Manga Classics Jane Eyre. It's a very close second to it. But I will say, without going into too much detail, because as I said before, on Friday I'm going to go into a more in-depth discussion on the original classic Jane Eyre. I will say that one other difference I find in the manga, which I think has to do to a combination of SunNeko Lee's art style of the manga and at the same time Crystal's adaptation, that together they have brought this about. See, I've read Jane Eyre a few times now, and the first time I read it, I absolutely loved it. It's what led me to reading classic novels, but as I progressed on reading it and I picked up on more details, and I guess my brain matured, I really started taking a dislike to Mr. Rochester because I found him very manipulative of Jane. But like I said, go into more detail of that Friday. But for the sake of this discussion, in the manga, a lot to do with the art of SunNeko Lee, the way she captured certain moments, the way the story was adapted to a shorter time frame in the pages. It cuts out certain parts, and it enhances certain areas that brings on a more loving and romantic feel. So in the manga, I can't help but like Mr. Rochester. Even though I know he's made mistakes and I know he's lied, I don't appreciate that, but still in the manga, I can't help but like him towards the end and really want him and Jane to get together, as opposed to in the original novel, where my opinion kind of differs very greatly. But yeah, they did such a wonderful work. They made me like a character that I originally hated, and I can't help but want to keep going back and rereading it. But overall, I definitely give this manga a solid 5 out of 5 stars. It's really very well done. They took the right amount of material from the original novel and they used it to the best of their abilities, and they formed a very close to the original story. So close that I think it can actually help some young readers build a love and appreciation of the original classics, which it would be a good thing. I definitely think more young readers need to find their way to the original classics. But overall, I enjoy this. I believe they did a very good job, and I wouldn't have thought this to be possible for, well, see, I know you can't always fit the exact content of a classic novel into a graphic novel or a manga, but like I said, this one did a great job of sticking to the content, as opposed to some graphic novels or mangas, which I'll be bringing up in the future, really went off tangent. I mean they did not stick to the original content, the original storyline, and they just completely mussed up the characters and their identities as individuals in the story. But this one was very well. I don't believe it brought out Jane's fervence for her religion and her what's the word I'm trying to find here? Jane has, I wouldn't say confidence in herself, but Jane understands who she is as a person, and she's willing to stand for what she believes because that is a part of who she is. And I don't believe the manga fully explains or shows that inner strength Jane has. I mean, it does show the part, where she makes a decision for herself and she follows it through. But I believe the novel goes better showing just how much inner strength Jane has. But I don't believe we get enough of that quite in the manga. But actually, because Jane is my favorite character in the entire story. It's one of the reasons I go back and reread, because she has a lot of inner strength. She started out in a bad situation and she made something of herself, which I find very... it's a connection to me personally, but I find it very inspiring. So you get to see a little bit of that in the manga. But I believe if you really want to get a better understanding of Jane Eyre, definitely look into the classics. Because while the pictures build a wonderful romance, I don't believe they delve deep enough into actual Jane's personality to show you just how great she really can be. But that'll be all for the evening. I believe I've gone over everything I wanted to discuss here. The art style presented, the comparisons of content, and the overall feel. And I've given my rating on it, which is a solid 5 out of 5 for this manga. And I just want to say, for anyone out there who hasn't read a classic novel, Manga Classics is a great place to start. They have done so many so far. The Scarlet Letter, Jane Eyre, Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, The Jungle Book, I believe. There's also Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, Romeo and Juliet, the works of Edgar Allan Poe. That is a real good one, by the way. And I also believe in the future they're releasing Dracula as well. And as soon as Manga Classics release Dracula, I am all over it on release date because that'll be great. So if you're looking to branch out into classics, maybe start there and get a general feel for it. And as always, support your local library. They're always community oriented. There's something there for everybody: computers, information, books, how to do's, mangas, graphics, anything you might possibly want. And I will see you again Friday for my Jane Eyre classic novel review. And then the Monday after, we will be back for an entirely new Manga Monday review. So, YouTube readers, keep reading, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.